All right, let's talk about drone airspace. I know, it can seem kind of complicated, but what if I told you there's a simple, friendly place in the sky where you can almost always fly your drone, no questions asked? Let's get into it.
That's right. The huge majority of the flights you're going to take will happen in one specific type of airspace. Think of it as your home base, the go-to spot for drone pilots everywhere. And the best part? It is by far the simplest place to fly. This is the big question, isn't it? The one every drone pilot wants to know. Where can you just go fly without getting all tangled up in paperwork and permissions? Well, the answer is actually a lot simpler than you might think. Let's find out. Okay, so let's start with your drone's home base, what I like to call the friendly skies. This is where you've got the most freedom, and honestly, it's the foundation for everything else you need to know. So say hello to your new best friend, Class G, or Class Golf, airspace. The two most important words you see here are uncontrolled and no air traffic control authorization is required. What that means is from the ground up to a certain altitude, you are pretty much good to go without having to call anyone for permission. Seriously, think of Class G as the wide open field of the sky. It's where you start, it's where most of your flights are going to happen, and it's designed to be totally accessible. It's exactly why we're calling this explainer Class G is your friend. This slide really boils it all down to one basic concept. For a drone pilot, it pretty much comes down to this. Are you in uncontrolled airspace, like Class G over on the left, or are you in controlled airspace, like all those other classes on the right? That one question determines everything you do next. So, if Class G is our fly freely zone, what happens when you need to fly somewhere else? Well, that's when we enter the ask first zones. Now, these aren't no-fly zones, not at all. They just require one extra step before you take off. And this is just a brilliant way to picture it. To protect all the planes and helicopters coming in and going, controlled airspace is built in layers around airports. The closer you get to that airport on the ground, the lower the ceiling of that controlled airspace gets, creating this perfect upside-down wedding cake shape. This table breaks it down nicely. You've got Class B for the biggest, busiest airports, think JFK or Atlanta. Then Class C for other major airports, and Class D for smaller airports that still have a control tower. See the pattern here? For a drone pilot, they all have one thing in common. You need to get authorization from air traffic control before you fly. And then there's Class E. Now, this one's a little different. It's technically controlled airspace, but it usually starts way up there at 700 or maybe 1,200 feet above the ground. And this is key because your friend, Class G, exists right below it. So as long as your drone stays in that comfy Class G layer, you're good to go, even if you're flying directly underneath a controlled zone. Okay, so beyond those standard airspace classes, there's another thing you've got to be aware of. Special use zones. These areas aren't always active, which is exactly why we call them check first zones. And this is where doing your pre-flight homework becomes absolutely critical. You'll see these marked all over aeronautical charts. Now, some, like prohibited areas, think the White House, are always a no-go. But others, like restricted areas or military operations areas, might only be active at certain times for things like military training. You just can't assume they're clear. And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Every responsible pilot has to ask this. These zones aren't on some regular 9-to-5 schedule. So, what's the game plan? How do you find out if that restricted area you want to fly near is hot today? Well, the good news is all the info you need is right there for you. You'll find it on your aeronautical charts and, most importantly, in the NOTAMs. That stands for Notices to Air Missions, and they're basically real-time updates for the sky. They'll tell you exactly what's active and when. Checking them isn't just a good idea, it's a requirement. Now, while a lot of those special use zones are on the charts, there's another type of restriction that's way more dynamic. These are temporary no-fly zones, and they can pop up with very little warning. So it's your job to know about them before you even think about spinning up your props. A TFR is exactly what it sounds like. It's a temporary bubble of restricted airspace. They get put in place for things like the president being in town, a huge sporting event like the Super Bowl, or to protect crews who are fighting a wildfire. These are serious, time-critical, no-fly zones. And let me be perfectly clear about this. Flying into a TFR is one of the fastest ways to get into very serious trouble. So why do so many people do it? Well, it's because they can pop up with almost no notice, catching unprepared pilots totally by surprise. The FAA takes this stuff incredibly seriously, which is why that last-minute check of the NOTAMs before you launch is absolutely non-negotiable. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got our go-to zones, our ask-first zones, and our check-first areas. So now let's put it all together into a practical, real-world pre-flight check. Okay, let's just run through a quick scenario. Imagine you're doing a roof inspection. You're flying low, only 200 feet above the ground. But when you look at your map, you realize your entire flight area is inside the surface boundaries of a Class D airport's airspace. So, think about it for a second. You're flying pretty low, way below where most planes would be. Do you need to get authorization from air traffic control for this flight? The answer is a huge yes. And this is a core principle you have to burn into your brain. It does not matter if you're at 50 feet or 400 feet. If you are geographically inside the boundaries of controlled airspace that goes all the way to the ground, like Class D, you need authorization. The type of airspace you're in, not how high you're flying, is what matters. So here it is, your simple 3-step sanity check before every single flight. 1. Know exactly where you're flying. 2. Figure out what class of airspace you're in. Is it your friend Class G, or is it one of those Ask First zones? And 3. Do that final check for any TFRs or other active restrictions. Simple, effective, and it's what the pros do. And this quote from the FAA really sums it all up. At the end of the day, the ultimate responsibility for knowing the airspace and any restrictions, well, it falls on you, the remote pilot in command. Every single flight, every single time. That is the hallmark of a safe and professional drone operator. So, there you have it. You've got the foundational knowledge now to navigate the skies safely and legally. You know where your home base is, in good old Class G, and you know the simple rules for operating everywhere else. See, the system isn't designed to stop you from flying. It's designed to keep everybody safe. So, with that knowledge, where's your next mission going to take you?